What is going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. And look at this, we are live, and it is not a game day. The first time we have done this here at Bengals Breakdown since I have been the host. Hopefully, this is something we can do at least on a weekly, maybe bi-weekly basis going forward throughout the offseason. Plenty of stuff to talk about here on Bengals Breakdown. Obviously, Black Monday took place earlier in the week. Bengals made a ton of moves on Black Monday, right? Getting rid of defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo along with a couple of other coaches as well. We will rehash some of those moves on today's show. Plenty of stuff to talk about. Also, some offseason planning stuff for the Bengals and a mailbag, of course, coming your way as well. Our first ever mailbag here on Bengals Breakdown. So welcome in. I appreciate everybody hanging out as always with us here at Bengals Breakdown. I'm really excited for our first live show on a non-game day here in 2025. Pretty exciting. Again, hopefully we can do this a lot going forward. Perhaps once a week or maybe even a bi-weekly basis as well. The first question that I have for you guys is very simple. Who do you want to be the next Bengals defensive coordinator? Zach Taylor made the tough decision on Monday to part ways with longtime Bengals DC Lou Anarumo, and he is currently going through the process of interviewing other candidates. And there's two that have been interviewed that has been reported by Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. We did a short on that yesterday for you guys on the channel, and our first segment on today's live show is going to be talking about those two candidates on today's show. So get those names for me into the comment section. We'll give a couple of shout outs here. Not exactly sure how many people are going to be stopping by. Again, this is our first time doing this on a non-game day, but hopefully we can get a good audience in here, have some fun, talk some Bengals football, and hopefully they can make some good decisions going forward over the course of this week, and then, of course, the entirety of the offseason as well. Zach Players in the chat. He says, what's going on? Nate is here as well. He says, who day? Justin Jeffer says, Bengals suck. All right, we got a little hater in here. That's all right. Hey, you're not wrong. Missed the playoffs with two of the best, probably the two best players in the National Football League, so that's fair. What else we got in here? Silent says, Al Golden or Robert Saleh are my top two. We talked about both of those guys earlier in the week on our Lou Anarumo replacements video. I like both of those guys as well. Al Golden was actually my favorite. We're going to talk about what exactly he had to say at his press conference with Notre Dame as he's kind of getting ready for the college football semifinal game. Notre Dame taking on Penn State tomorrow night. So obviously his focus right now is in other areas as far as coaching football goes, so we'll see. But I would agree. I think Al Golden certainly is at the top of the list for me personally as well. Ty Man the Buckeye is here stopping by. He says, what up? Good to have you as always, Ty Man, a very loyal supporter of all the stuff we do here at Chat Sports, and stops by Bengals Breakdown as well. Mark says, what's up, everybody? Robert Saleh is his go-to for defensive coordinator. It's a hot name, right? Obviously, he didn't really have the best tenure as a head coach with New York. Ultimately got fired. I think he was kind of a scapegoat in that situation, right? I don't think it certainly was 100% his fault, but he took the blame for that. Ended up getting fired by Woody Johnson and company, but people around the league really have a lot of respect for him on the defensive side of the ball, and I know San Francisco has already reached out trying to, have a reunion with Robert Saleh. Of course, he helped lead them to a Super Bowl. He did some great stuff there. I think a lot of teams around the league have interest in Robert Saleh. We'll see. We'll spend some time talking about him on today's show as well, but certainly a hot name out there that a lot of teams are going to be after here over the course of the next few weeks as teams start to fill in their staffs. Houday number 9 says he wants Saleh, and he says, what's up? Good to have you here, Houday number 9. Got some new folks in here that haven't typically hung out with us during our watch party, so it's good to have some new faces in here in our chat. I really appreciate it. Thomas Smith says, Bengals will run through my veins even during the darkest times. I love that, Thomas. I think as a diehard Bengals fan, I certainly am right there with you. We've been through it through thick and thin with this franchise. And they're going to test our loyalty yet again with breaking our hearts again here in 2024. But hopefully we have good things on the horizon to come here in 2025. So keep those comments coming. I want to see some more names in the live chat right now as far as who you want to be the Bengals' next defensive coordinator. While you guys are doing that, we got to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time, because today's live edition of Bengals Breakdown is presented by Game Time. Obviously, the focus right now is the NFL playoffs. And I would really encourage you guys to head over to Game Time and get some tickets for some of these NFL playoff games if you are able to do so. I have been to a bunch of different Bengals playoff games at Paycor Stadium before I was working here. And how did I get my tickets? Yep, you guessed it. I went over to Game Time to get that done. They also have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time is the easiest way to find and buy tickets to live events. Again, Bengals season, of course, is over, but you can get ready for some Cincinnati Reds spring training, perhaps. Get down to Goodyear, Arizona, catch a couple of Reds games. Certainly a lot of optimism surrounding their organization, bringing in Terry Francona as their manager. Also, Cincinnati Bearcats basketball. Those games are really entertaining as well. They certainly have hit a wall since beating Xavier. Hopefully Wes Miller can get the boys to regroup and they can wake up a little, but just really haven't been there focused for the past couple of games. Hopefully that changes. Got a big game against Kansas this weekend at Fifth Third. I will be there for that. How did I get my tickets? You guessed it. Game Time. Also love the event cancellation protection with Game Time. If you're getting tickets to a concert, the artist cancels on you, that's totally fine. Game Time is going to reimburse you your cash. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, I know you guys are going to love this question as well. We got about 60 people in here. We'll see which side of the fence you guys are on as far as Zach Taylor goes. Do you think Zach Taylor is on the hot seat in 2025? I know a lot of you people are out there calling for his job this season. I tried to tell you it wasn't going to happen. Obviously, it has not happened. He will be back with Cincinnati in 2025. Let me know if you think he is on the hot seat for this season. I've got my thoughts on that situation. I've been called a Zach Taylor apologist. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I certainly am a Zach Taylor supporter, but if you get another repeat of what happened here in 2024, you miss the playoffs, then it might be time to make a change at that position. Who Day number 9 says, yep, absolutely. CWT says, kinda. Wale says yes. Jacob says yes. Trey Wise, or Weesey, says 75%. Mayo Ben Ballin says yes, no doubt. Not even a debate. Uday number 9 says, I like him a lot, but if this happens again, he needs to go. Probably fair. Probably fair. Brock getting a little carried away there in the comment section. That's not true. That's not true. Think about all those playoff wins that he has here in Cincinnati. Yep, quite a few. Silent says, yes, if we miss the playoffs again. Probably with you, Silent. Probably with you, Silent. I know there's a lot of people out there very disgusted, angry with Zach Taylor for this performance this year, but I don't think he deserves all of the blame. Of course, he deserves some blame. He's the head coach, for crying out loud. But as far as being the main culprit for the blame, I don't think so. I think you got to look more upstairs with this organization. Some of the things they did on defense, or lack thereof, you could say, right? Because some of the decisions that they whiffed on in the offseason and just the cheapness of the organization that seemingly came back to bite them in the rear end once again. So we'll spend some time talking about Zach Taylor throughout today's live show here at Bengals Breakdown, so keep those comments flowing. Is Zach Taylor on the hot seat in 2025? Also, we will be doing our first mailbag here at Bengals Breakdown, something all of our chat sports channels do. It's pretty much a sue-in for every single live show. At least one segment is going to be a live mailbag. This is my first time doing a live mailbag here on Bengals Breakdown. Pretty excited about it. So we had about 70 people in here hanging out. Make sure you guys get your questions in the chat at #Bengals. By the way, my buddy, good friend, Chris Daughtry is producing today's show. He's helping me out. Usually when we do these live shows, I'm producing. It's pretty nice. Now I can just talk with you guys, do my thing up here. Chris is behind the scenes, pushing all the buttons, helping us out with that. And in order for him to find your questions, you need to put in hashtag Bengals. So if you just make a comment without hashtag Bengals, Chris is not going to be able to see that, and we're not going to be able to get to your questions on the mailbag. So get your questions in. That will be our second segment here on our live show. Hashtag mailbag or super chat. Skip the line altogether. And if you send in a super chat, you, of course, will be our first person that we go to as far as the mailbag goes. So make sure you do that. Don't believe we have any hashtag Bengals questions in right now. So very simple. You have a question you want me to answer, type in hashtag Bengals, type your question, get it in the chat, and we will talk about it on today's mailbag. So really looking forward to that. Hopefully we get some good participation throughout the board from everybody that is hanging out with us here at Bengals Breakdown. Make sure you do that. Now, we are just a matter of moments away from starting our live show. First live show we've done here at Bengals Breakdown that is not a game day. But in order for us to do that, gotta like the show. We had about 80 people in here and only 14 likes. Always going for that 50-50 ratio as far as viewership and likes go. So let's try to get a couple of more likes here on today's video. Hopefully, we can get up to about 40 likes or so here in the next couple of minutes. Get that 50-50 ratio. We are up to 15. Now we're up to 18. Got to get to 25 before we move on here at Bengals Breakdown, and I'll tell you exactly what is on the pipeline as far as what is coming up. Got 18 likes right now. I got 20. Need 5 more likes. Help us out. Hit that thumbs up icon if you have not done so already. Something we should do for all of our videos here at Bengals Breakdown. See the hashtag Bengals comments coming in? Got our guy here at Chat Sports, Tom Downey. He's in the chat. He's got a question. Appreciate that from Tom. Keep the comments flowing. Make sure you guys get in your hashtag Bengals questions. Again, that is going to be our second segment today here on our live show. Hopefully we get a lot of interaction from all you guys as well with the mailbag. Really looking forward to having some good conversations with you guys on that mailbag segment. Again, hopefully this is something we could do on a weekly basis or at least a bi-weekly basis going forward throughout the offseason. 22 likes, need 3 more before we can move on and tell you what's coming up on today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. Got a couple of segments coming your guys' way. Lots to talk about with this football team, but keep hitting that thumbs up icon for us. We greatly appreciate it. 23 likes right now. Just need 2 more for us to move on. Houday number 9 says, I think Higgins saved his job against the Broncos. It's an interesting way to phrase it, Houday number 9, but I definitely think that performance against Denver makes you think, if you were the front office, like, you know what, we might really need this guy to come back in 2025 and beyond. He's going to be a well-coveted guy from around the league. I think he's a top 12 receiver in the league. Is that crazy to say? I think he's that good. And Joe Burrow certainly doesn't want to see him leave. And I'm at the point where I don't think I want to see him leave either. But we're going to spend some time talking about T. Higgins on today's show. We got to 25 likes. I appreciate everybody to hit that thumbs up icon for us. This is what's coming up on the docket for today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. Obviously, we got to be talking defensive coordinators every single day here at Bengals Breakdown until the team, of course, makes the decision. By the team, I mean Zach Taylor. He said himself this is 100% his decision, and this arguably is the biggest decision of his coaching career to this point. He has to get this hire right. He has to knock it out of the park. He needs to do his due diligence with this hiring process. We've got 2 names that we will talk about that allegedly have been interviewed. I say allegedly, but they've been reported that they've been interviewed, so I think we can certainly assume that those things have happened. I want to see a long list of guys that he brings in. I don't want this to be a thing where he's only talking to a few guys that makes a decision. No, I want to see a long list of guys in the coming days. We will spend our first segment talking all about the Bengals defensive coordinator position with this football team. Second segment, live mailbag. As I talked about, make sure you get your hashtag Bengals questions in for me right now. Saw a few of those in the comments section. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can get some more as we progress throughout today's show. Last segment, going to be talking about the perfect Bengals offseason plan. Things that I think this team needs to do this offseason in order to have a successful 2025. 10 steps. We will break those down as our final segment here on today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here this afternoon. We've got plenty to talk about, and that is all coming up live right here on Bengals Breakdown. What is going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. And on today's show, we're going to be diving into the latest surrounding the Bengals' search for a new defensive coordinator. Obviously, on Black Monday, Zach Taylor opted to make a move at that DC spot, letting go of longtime defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. Very tough decision for Zach, right? Those two were very, very close, and they had a lot of success together as well. But that's kind of what comes with the territory, right? When you're a head coach in the NFL and you have a season where you fall so short of your expectations going in, major changes have to be made. And I think Zach Taylor made the right call getting off of Lou Anarumo. Lou's going to land on his feet, right? He'll probably have another opportunity. He probably already has offers at this point. He'll have another DC job in 2025. Absolutely no doubt about it. But on today's show, we're going to be talking about the two guys that they have interviewed already, as well as some other potential candidates as well. But before we do that, I want you guys to get interactive with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Who do you want to be the Bengals' next defensive coordinator? This is an opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show in our comments section right now. We are going for the most comments of the month of January. We're going for 200 comments on this video. So spam whatever you got to spam. Get as many names as you got to get in our comment section. I really want to know what you guys think. Maybe we'll have, similar names in mind coming up on our show here today, or maybe you have some new suggestions for us as well. But get down in the comments and let me know who you want to be the Bengals' next defensive coordinator. All right, got this news yesterday from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. He talked about two guys that the Bengals had plans to interview, and this, of course, happened yesterday, and I have been told that this interview with Patrick Graham did indeed go down yesterday with the Cincinnati Bengals. Patrick Graham, of course, the defensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's kind of in limbo right now because his head coach, Antonio Pierce, was let go. So he has the opportunity to seek interviews elsewhere. But again, he doesn't really know his status at this point. Raiders haven't hired a new head coach, so there's a chance that he could be coming back to Las Vegas at that defensive coordinator position. But Cincinnati, Zach Taylor, opting to interview Patrick Graham. And this is a guy that's well-respected around the National Football League. He's had some stops along his journey. He is 45 years of age, so he's got some experience, no doubt. And he comes from that Bill Belichick tree, right? As you can see there, he spent 6 or 7 years with the New England Patriots in some kind of role. I had several different roles, was just kind of a defensive assistant. Then he was a position coach at one point as well, was a part of the Super Bowl in which they beat the Seattle Seahawks, so he is a Super Bowl champion. And from there, he's had success in other spots as well. Was with the New York Giants for a couple of years, 1 year with the Green Bay Packers, also a year with the Miami Dolphins, a couple with the New York Giants, again, a second stint as the DC of the New York Football Giants. And then, of course, the past couple of years has been the defensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. So he's a guy that's been around the block and a guy that I think Zach Taylor has a lot of trust in. And you can see that in terms of him being the first guy that Zach Taylor opted to interview. Leads us to the pinned comment of today's video. Would you hire Patrick Graham as the Bengals defensive coordinator? Let me know. Type Y for yes or N for no in the comments section. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. All right, let's take a look at what exactly Vegas did defensively. Now, we know Vegas is picking very high in the 2025 NFL Draft. Why? Because they didn't win many football games. You take a look at some of these stats here defensively. They didn't do much for you either on that side of the ball. Now, that necessarily isn't an indictment on Patrick Graham and his abilities as a DC. They don't really have a great, personnel there on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they got a star, Max Crosby, one of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive player in the National Football League. But beyond that, lots of holes on that roster. But I don't know personally if he is the guy that I would want to bring in if I am the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm looking for a guy that is a little bit younger, right? Not that 45 is old by any means, but I want a young, hip guy that's going to come in, and I want a guy that's kind of been on a heater, right? Patrick Graham really hasn't been on a heater. I understand that, he might be a great coach, a great coordinator, whatever, but as far as, how his teams have performed in recent years, he's really at the bottom of the league as far as defenses go when he's leading the Las Vegas Raiders. So hopefully Zach knows something that maybe we don't, but when you just take a look at the numbers, it's hard to get excited about a guy like Patrick Graham to really come in, and you're sitting there looking at him like, how is he going to be better than Lou Anarumo? It's tough to kind of come to that conclusion when you see the stuff that he has done in his career to this point. Second guy that we are going to talk about, the Bengals interviewed DeMarcus Covington today, who is the DC of the New England Patriots. Of course, the New England Patriots are also in a head coaching search right now, so he's kind of in limbo, doesn't exactly know what his future is going to hold. He has the opportunity to interview elsewhere as well. And the Bengals made that interview here on Wednesday with DeMarcus Covington. Here's what Covington has done as far as his NFL history goes. He is also a New England Patriots guy, and all of his NFL experience has come with the New England Patriots. He's 35 years of age, so he's 10 years younger than Patrick Graham. I think a lot of people view him as a potential up-and-coming guy. But again, let's take a look at what New England did defensively this season. Yeah, hanging out at the bottom of the league in a lot of these categories as well. Granted, they're picking high in the draft again. Had an opportunity to be the first overall pick, which they squandered away as they beat Buffalo the final week of the season. But obviously, you take a look at these numbers, and you aren't blown away by any of this stuff either. So, look, two guys that the Bengals have interviewed right now. Me personally, look, I don't know these guys. I'm not a football coach. I haven't talked football with these guys, right? But seeing what they have done, it's hard to really get excited about either one of these candidates. I was a big fan of Lou Anarumo. I think Zach made the right call in saying, you know what? It wasn't good enough the past 2 years. We have to make a change at that position. But I'm looking for a significant upgrade from Lou Anarumo, and it's really hard for me to say that either one of these two guys would be able to do that for me at this point. We'll continue with our show here in a moment, but first, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at Game Time, because today's show is presented by Game Time. Really encourage you guys to check out some postseason NFL tickets over on Game Time. I've had the opportunity to go to a few postseason Bengals games in my life. How do we get our tickets at Game Time? And they make everything so easy for you. Was at the Bengals-Raiders game when they snapped their streak, right? The first game that they won when they were on their way to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago was absolutely electric. Game Time got us our tickets in the most quickest way possible. Was very efficient and no hoops to jump through. Really encourage you guys to check them out. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks is the easiest way to find and buy tickets to live events. My two favorite features on Game Time: the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy with Game Time. Secondly, the event cancellation protection. You're going to a concert, the artist cancels on you, that's totally fine. Game Time is going to reimburse you your money. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, when we made our original Lou Anarumo replacements video, we talked about Al Golden, who, of course, is the current defensive coordinator of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He's getting ready for a college football semifinal game against Penn State tomorrow night. And Golden, of course, served as the Bengals linebackers coach for 2 years. One of those years, the Bengals found their way in the Super Bowl in large part thanks to how their linebackers were playing late in that season. I view him as a potential top candidate for the Cincinnati Bengals at this defensive coordinator position, but he had some interesting comments the other day as he was kind of getting interviewed by the press in the lead up to this semifinal game against Penn State. Here exactly is what Al Golden had to say. He said, "Look, it took us 30 years to get here," meaning Notre Dame, "to this point. I'm not worried about anything else but how to stop Penn State." And I mean that. Two really good backs, a tight end that is dominant. We just talked about the quarterback and a scheme that is really, really challenging. That's the only thing we're focused on right now. I've talked to nobody. I can't even get out of the facility right now. We just had the shortest week of the year. Now look, this just sounds like a coach that is absolutely locked in, right? And he should be. He's got probably the biggest game of his career on the horizon tomorrow night. His defense is the main reason that Notre Dame is in this position. He wants to be locked in. He wants to limit those distractions, and he wants to make sure his side of the ball with Notre Dame is locked in as well. So I totally get that, but I'm not sure if I'm buying his remarks. You mean to say that Zach Taylor hasn't reached out to him whatsoever since he has made this firing of Lou Anarumo on Monday? I do find that very, very hard to believe, and I do think it would be an incredible mistake if Zach Taylor did not at least reach out to Al Golden. I understand that he's going to want to get this position filled as efficiently as possible, and with Golden potentially still having 2 more games, and that would be, a couple of weeks away before his season has come to an end, I think it's worth waiting to at least get an opportunity to talk to Al Golden. Because, again, he had so much success when he was the linebackers coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, and he really developed guys that all, by the way, were under a rookie contract when he was there. It was Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, same guys you got right now. He was coaching them when they were really, really young in this league, and he really developed them into some great players. If you remember that linebacker unit, when you went to the Super Bowl, they were flying around making plays. Cincinnati needs that group in particular to get back to that form in 2025, and Golden could be a guy that could certainly help them do that, as well as aid the development of all your other young players on that side of the ball as well. Let me know in the comment section. You buying these comments from Al Golden? You really think that the Bengals and him have not spoken whatsoever, at least shared a text message or an email or something like that? Let me know. Type A for yes or B for no in the comment section right now. All right, James Rapine of SI, All Bengals on YouTube, Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Used to work with him at my previous job. He does incredible work covering the Cincinnati Bengals. He had 3 candidates that we're going to talk about here to kind of close out today's show. First guy is Robert Saleh that he talked about, and Rapine seems to be really excited about Saleh being a potential candidate for the Cincinnati Bengals. Only problem is pretty much everybody that is looking for help on the defensive side of the ball wants Robert Saleh. There's already been reports that a potential reunion between Saleh and the 49ers could be at play for 2025, and I wasn't super stoked at the idea of Robert Saleh because I feel like his style completely contrasts the style of Zach Taylor. Robert Saleh is definitely more of a hype man. He's kind of a crazy guy, right? And Zach Taylor isn't like that at all. But then I got to thinking, well, maybe you need someone to kind of contrast Zach Taylor's style. Maybe that's kind of why you haven't had success on that side of the ball for a couple of years. I would be surprised if the Bengals were able to land Robert Saleh. I have a feeling he will be elsewhere, but he's certainly going to be a highly coveted guy, and it makes sense that Rapine has him at the top of his list. Secondly here, this is a name that we have not talked about to this point, and James brought it up, and I thought this is kind of an interesting idea. Tosh Lupoi, who currently right now is the defensive coordinator of the Oregon Ducks, who, by the way, were great defensively throughout the season, but obviously their final game of the year in the Rose Bowl, that's about as bad as you can get, but I'm not really sure anybody was stopping Ohio State on that particular evening. Hopefully going forward, Texas is able to stop him. But anyway, Lupoi's coaching history, let's kind of get into that. Spent a lot of time at Alabama under Nick Saban. He did some great things for them as well. He won 2 national titles there, one of which he was the coordinator, so really good stuff from him at Alabama. And you can see that he wanted to make that jump to the collegiate level. I kind of thought, back then that he might stick around at Alabama for a little bit, but he said, you know what, I'm going to leave as the Alabama defensive coordinator and go be a position coach in the NFL. Obviously, he chose the wrong team there with the Cleveland Browns, and then kind of just bounced around, right? 1 year with the Browns, 1 year with the Falcons, 1 with the Jags. Now he is at Oregon, but that stint there in the middle kind of shows me that he probably wants to be back in the NFL, and he could potentially be a guy that Cincinnati brings in at that defensive coordinator spot. He, like Saleh, is a very fiery guy that is a bit of a, crazy guy out there, and which sometimes you need that in your DC. That definitely would be a switch up of what we've had with Lou Anarumo over the past 6 years. Let me know, would you hire Tosh Lupoi as the Bengals defensive coordinator? Type H for hire or P for pass. Let us know in the comments of today's video. Last guy here, Patrick Graham, who, of course, we led off the show talking about the Las Vegas defensive coordinator, the first interview for the Cincinnati Bengals at that defensive coordinator position. Again, this doesn't really get me excited whatsoever. This is the 3rd guy on James's list. We'll see. He's a respected guy around the league, but I just don't see getting rid of Lou and bringing in Patrick Graham. That just doesn't really do much for me. At that point, probably would have just kept Lou personally, but we'll see. Zach Taylor clearly likes him as he was the first interview. Here's what Zach had to say the other day about hiring a defensive coordinator, and I thought this was really kind of powerful as far as, what he had to say. He said, they get the most of their players, certainly, and I think you got to understand our division that we play in. That's going to dictate really where you end up at the end of the season. And so I think this division is different. I think when people come and they play all 4 teams in this division, they feel that immediately. And so you're certainly going to need a coordinator that has an understanding of that. There's plenty of guys in the league that have been around the block, that have done that, and now go through the process and find the right one. I think this is really well said by Zach Taylor. He understands the importance of winning in the AFC North, and obviously this is something that Cincinnati has to do a much better job of. There's 2 major adjustments that need to be made in 2025 for the Cincinnati Bengals. The first one, of course, is the slow starts, which we'll talk about that in our final segment of today's show. That has to get correct. Can't just start out in September and not win football games like you have all of these years since Zach Taylor has been there. And the second is success in this division. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to go out there and beat teams like Baltimore and Pittsburgh. You cleaned it up against Cleveland this year. We're able to beat them twice, but you had Baltimore beat twice. And you very well could have beat Pittsburgh the first time, and you squandered that away. You have too much talent to be falling to teams like that in your division, and I think that needs to be a priority for Cincinnati in 2025. You got to find a way to at least have a winning record against your division, because I think you have the most talent out of anybody in this division, and that includes Baltimore as well. 2025 is going to be the biggest year of Zach Taylor's career. There's absolutely no doubt about it. If he misses the playoffs, might be time to look at a new head coach, which obviously I do not like saying that because I am a big fan of Zach Taylor, but he's got to find a way to make the postseason in 2025. Simply way too much talent on the roster. All right, before we get out of here, we got to talk about this. With Jermaine Burton, there's some more bad news surrounding Jermaine Burton. He was accused of assaulting a woman that he was dating. The Inquirer has a piece that kind of details the whole thing. Won't go into too many details. Would encourage you to go to the Inquirer and check that out if you have not done so already, but it is very, very troubling. Was accused of hitting his girlfriend, and then there was even a part at the end where she said on a 911 call that he held a knife up to his neck and said that he was going to kill himself. So just really, really troubling stuff here with Jermaine Burton. He's had issues all throughout the year, was then evicted. By the way, there was like $10,000 worth of damages with his apartment. So, look, I don't think the girl would just make up stuff like this, right? And if this does indeed prove to be true, we should never see Jermaine Burton in a Cincinnati Bengals uniform ever again. You just have to understand that, you know what, we took him in the third round, but it was a complete whiff, and you need to move off this guy if these things are indeed true. Before we get out of here, make sure you hit that sub button, youtube.com/Bengals TV. Pretty much daily Bengals videos coming your guys' way. And, of course, some live shows as well throughout this offseason. Really excited for that. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/Bengals TV. All right. Mailbag time here at Bengals Breakdown. Our first mailbag that we have ever done here at Bengals Breakdown. Get in your questions. Hashtag Bengals or Super Chat to get in our mailbag. Got about over 100 people in here watching with us right now. Appreciate all you guys hanging out. Make sure you get your questions in. Chris, how are we doing on questions? Do we have enough to run this? We got some good questions in there? Enough questions, he says. Keep the questions coming. Chris will get to them. Chris helping me out today producing our live show here at Bengals Breakdown. Good chance for you guys to get involved with our show, and I'll answer some of your questions. We'll be live for it. Obviously, I'm really not seeing any. Obviously, I can see some of the questions in the chat, but I'm really not paying too much attention to it. When it pops up on the screen, that'll really be the first time that I'd really take a good look at the question. I'll just kind of go from the heart, go with the gut, go with the brain, and whatever comes to mind will be kind of my gut response to some of your questions regarding the Cincinnati Bengals. So really looking forward to that. Once we start the cut, you can still keep your questions coming in with hashtag Bengals, so make sure you guys do that for me right now. Make sure you guys share today's video for me on social media if you have not done so already. Any platform, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Share today's video for me right now. The boss has said we got to get our shares numbers up here in the month of January. I think we can do that. Going for at least 10 shares on this video. Help me out. I know there's some Bengals fans out there that aren't exactly tapped into what we're doing here at Bengals Breakdown. Our goal is to change that. Make sure you share today's video for me right now. First mailbag question is from Trey Dog. He said, should we sign T or tag and trade him? We need so much defensive help. Couldn't ask for a better way to start our mailbag here from Trey Dog. Interesting. Going into this season, I was saying, you know what? Last year with T. Higgins, this is going to be it. Hopefully we can capitalize with the championship. Obviously it didn't happen. Bengals didn't make the playoffs. And then we will move off of him after that. But the season has ended. I've seen what I've seen. You guys have seen it all as well, and it is my mindset that the Bengals need to do whatever it takes to bring back T. Higgins in 2025. I think this offense just flows when T. Higgins is out there at that wide receiver position. It opens up Jamar Chase to do incredible things. Look, I think Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the league, no doubt about it. But I think he kind of taps into a whole different level when T. Higgins is out there with him as well. I don't know. They're going to have to jump through some hoops in order to make this happen. Obviously, not a lot of trust with the Bengals organization when it comes to doing this kind of stuff. Priority number one is sign Jamar Chase. But the next priority, besides getting a pass rusher maybe, at the very top of the list of priorities is retaining T. Higgins as well. I think it's important for Cincinnati to bring him back in 2025. Joe Burrow said, can't get into a habit of letting really good players leave your building. We've seen this in a couple of seasons with in the Joe Burrow era, good guys leaving the building. Most notably, of course, Jesse Bates III. Don't want that to happen again with T. Higgins. He came in with Joe Burrow, and they've really have built this thing from the ground up. I would like to see him back next year under a long-term deal. Next comment here from Bailey Victory Parkway. Says, hashtag Bengals, do you think we should keep Mike Gesicki around? I feel like he was productive. Funny, both of the questions here on our mailbag are something that we're going to be talking about on our final segment, but my answer to that question also is you should try to bring back Mike Gesicki. You shouldn't have to jump through a ton of hoops in order to bring him back, but I think you should try and do everything you can to do so. The thing about Mike Gesicki is that he can go out there and really give you a different dynamic to your offense, because he's basically just like a slot receiver right there, right? Because he's a tight end, but he's a big body guy, a red zone threat. Joe Burrow loves him. Off the field, you hear great things about Gesicki and the things that he can do out there. So Gesicki might garner a large contract in the offseason based on the great season he had here in Cincinnati. I was fully expecting the season coming in. He just wasn't able to showcase his abilities because he was dealing with a complete, mess at quarterback in New England. He came in, had a great season. I would try to do everything you can to bring him back, but if the number is just too big, you might have to let him walk because he certainly deserves a reasonable contract. He might have to take less to stay with the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. We'll see if he is willing to do that or he wants to go and get his money. I would certainly understand that as well. I know Joe Burrow wants to have Mike Gesicki back, but if you're bringing T. Higgins back and you also need to address the defensive side of the ball, might not have room for him, but I think you should definitely at least try to get Gesicki back in 2025. From Fred, should we bring back Mike Hilton? This one is also very, very interesting. I've gone back and forth on this. I know I'm probably supposed to kind of pick a side, right? For most of the year, it was a no, but then he was able to turn back the clocks when you went on your winning streak to end the season, and it kind of became a yes. So basically, whatever the organization decides to do, I'm going to trust with regards to Mike Hilton, not necessarily other stuff. But look, Hilton's been a big part of the success you've had in recent years. He just can't really run with the wide receivers anymore, but when he can, fire off those pressures off the edge when he comes on those corner blitzes, nobody does it like Mike Hilton, and he was able to, get an interception, hands, PBUs, blocking balls down at the line of scrimmage. He really came alive at the end of the season, kind of tapped back in to the things that we had saw him do in previous years. So I'm going to leave that one completely up to the organization. I really like Mike Hilton. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it work, but I would be for bringing Mike Hilton back if that is what Cincinnati opts to do. Leads to the pinned comment of today's video. Would you bring back Mike, or what would you do with Mike Hilton? Type B for bring him back or L for let leave. I want to know what you guys think. If that ad comes here on YouTube, totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments and let us know. Our first super chat of the afternoon here at Bengals Breakdown from Fuzzy Balls says, it's important to remember that a player who is franchise tagged can refuse any trade, and T stated he has no desire to play with a quarterback who isn't elite. Yeah, very fair call there by Fuzzy Balls. That was kind of my question kind of going into the season, whether or not T would sit there and say that, oh, I want to go get my money, but then I got to play with somebody that isn't Joe Burrow. I think it'd be tough for him to have to adjust and play with a guy that isn't as elite. We'll see. I'm kind of expecting Cincinnati to tag him again and then kind of figure out what to do after that. But that's a good point there by Fuzzy Balls, and we certainly appreciate your $5 super chat. Going to be plenty to talk about in regards to T. Higgins this offseason. Absolutely no doubt about it. Mike says, is Zach Taylor on the hot seat in 2025? If this team misses the playoffs in 2025, then yeah, you have to say he's on the hot seat. Will Mike Brown and the Brown family make a move, the Blackburn family make a move at the head coaching spot if they miss the playoffs in 25? Not sure they'll pull the trigger, but I definitely think it at least is worthy of the conversation to talk about moving off of him. At that point, I got really frustrated because so many people was calling for his job this season, which that would have just been entirely premature to fire Zac Taylor here in 2024. I'm glad the organization did the right thing. They are retaining him, but no doubt 2025 is a massive season for Zac Taylor. He's got to find a way back into the postseason. We'll continue with our show here in a moment. But first, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Again, it's playoff time. Make sure you guys check out Game Time and see some of their NFL playoff ticket deals. Really no better place to get tickets to see the NFL postseason. I've done it several times with Game Time. Went to the AFC Championship several years ago with my dad in Kansas City. Got to see a Bengals win that year. It was absolutely awesome. One of the best days of my life. How did we get our tickets? You guessed it, Game Time. My two favorite features on Game Time, the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy with Game Time. So if you're going to a baseball game, you won't get blocked out by a foul pole or something else like that. And also the event cancellation protection. If you're going to a concert, the artist cancels on you, that's totally fine. Game Time will reimburse you. They also have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Who Day number 9 says thoughts on the O-line status. Got 3 guys that I really like and 2 guys that you need to move off from when you're talking about that offensive line position. I think Amarius Mims at that right tackle spot. I think you knocked that pick out of the park. He is your right tackle of the future. I am really excited about him. Had some injury trouble here in his rookie campaign. Hopefully that doesn't continue to happen. But Amarius Mims is your guy at that right tackle spot. Orlando Brown Jr., guy's a warrior, was fighting through that broken leg there the last couple of weeks of the season. Same thing with him. He's your guy at left tackle, but are you going to be able to be more healthy going forward? He really started out the season really strong. I thought he ended it strong too, despite playing on that broken leg. Ted Karras there holding down the center spot. Absolutely love Ted. Great leader. Thought he had a really, really good season for Cincinnati at that center spot. Hopefully he's here for the next couple of years. But then you talk about the interior offensive line. Alex Kappa, we'll talk about him in our third segment as well. Seems like a great guy. People really liked him in Hard Knocks, but it's probably time to move off Alex Kappa. He had a dreadful season for you at that right tackle spot. Cordell Volson, you took a 4th-round pick on him a couple of years ago. He was able to work his way into the starting lineup as a rookie, but really hasn't progressed the way that you wanted him to. We'll see if a new offensive line coach could help with his development. He might be a guy that, not necessarily need to move off from, but I don't want to see him starting at left guard. And same with Cody Ford. I don't think he is a starter in this league. He filled in admirably, I guess you could say, at different positions along the offensive line, but I don't want to see Cody Ford be your guy on week 1 next season. Next comment here with our mailbag. What position group should Cincy draft in round 1? Good question here from CJ. I think there's a couple of different ways that you could look at this. I think it's got to be on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think you can take an interior offensive lineman in the first round. You need too much help on defense. And with me, it's either a pass rusher or a defensive back, whether it be a corner or a safety. If Malachi Starks is somehow there, I think you take him at that safety spot. He will probably be gone by the time you are picking, but you might need to go back in the well with another pass rusher. You did it a couple of years ago with Myles Murphy. You whiffed. You might need to try it again and make sure that this time around you get that pick right. But I absolutely think it is somewhere on the defensive side of the ball that you have to allocate your first-round draft pick here in 2025. What position do you guys think Cincinnati should draft in 2025 in round 1? Type DE for defensive end, DB for defensive back, either corner or safety. Or if you think a different position is of need, that's fine. Type O for me in the comment section. Another comment here from Nate says, do you think that Jermaine Burton already played his final snaps in the NFL? It's a good question. I think the Bengals are certainly going to let this legal situation play out probably before making a move, I would guess, just to make sure, all the boxes are checked and things like that. I would say probably would be my answer to that question. If these things do indeed prove to be true, I hope it's his last time that we have seen him play as a Cincinnati Bengal. Maybe another team takes a try or takes a chance on him later on. We'll see. It's unfortunate because you see the talent there. He did a nice job returning kicks for you at the end of the year. He's a speedster. He's a really good athlete, but clearly his head is in the totally wrong spot, and quite honestly, it's not even close. It's not like he's just a little bit off. It seems like he's pretty considerably off. So it's a fair question. I hope it's the last time we've seen him with Cincinnati, but maybe another team will perhaps give him another chance. CWT says, what is your dream free agent signing or trade this offseason? Wow. That is a good question from CWT. And I know you said dream, but I'm going to keep it somewhat realistic here, and I'm going to say Matthew Judon is a guy that I would like to sign, who, of course, played it with New England and then was with Atlanta this year. I still think he has some things to offer as far as a pass rusher goes, and he in my mind is one of the top defensive end free agents that we've got here in 2025. I would like to bring in Matthew Judon again. He did incredible things during his time in New England. I still think he can kind of tap into that. You need someone to make splashy plays for you on defense alongside Trey Hendrickson. And I think Matthew Judon is one of the first names that comes to mind when I'm thinking about a potential signee at that pass rusher position for the Cincinnati Bengals here this offseason. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, especially if you're enjoying this Bengals mailbag right now. Hopefully this is something we can do a lot going forward. I'm having a lot of fun getting interactive with you guys and answering your questions live here on Bengals Breakdown. So let me know, or don't let me know. Hit that sub button, rather. YouTube.com/BengalsTV. Mike says, do we make some draft day trades for more draft picks? Probably not, Mike. This is not something that Cincinnati likes to do. I'm sure they will go into the draft with however many picks they have, and they will leave the draft with exactly that many picks as well. That's just, you don't typically see them make moves like that when it comes to the NFL draft, and I'm okay with that, to be quite honest with you. I think you're going to have a lot of opportunities to add somebody through the draft that you really like with one of the picks that you have, so I would be surprised to see Cincinnati make any trades as far as positioning goes in the NFL draft. Who do you want as the next Bengals defensive coordinator? Just wrapped up our mailbag here on Bengals Breakdown. Let me know in the comment section. Get those names for me in there right now. I really like Aubrey Pleasant with the Los Angeles Rams. Him and Zach spent time together in L.A., so there's a bit of a connection there. Really, at this point, for me, it's like, oh, you coach with McVay. Yep, I trust you. I want you. Come on over. That's kind of how I am right now, to be completely honest with you. It sucks because McVay obviously beat you in the Super Bowl, but what he's done is incredibly impressive. They won the division again this year. I don't think many people picked them to do that going into the season. They're going to be dangerous in the playoffs. Got a tough matchup with Minnesota in the opening round, but Aubrey Pleasant's the guy that kind of gets me fired up, and I think that could potentially be a good fit in Cincinnati. Jordan says, is there any player that would get you to trade the first-round pick for, realistic and pipe dream? So you're picking at that 17 spot. I mean, if there's a big-time pass rusher or a lockdown corner, yeah. But apart from that, no. And it's a great question. And I appreciate the question, but it's just kind of hard for me to think that way because I know Cincinnati isn't doing that. Like, there's no way that happens. But no names that really pop into mind. But if you could get a veteran lockdown corner or a veteran pass rusher, that would be great. Definitely someone that is a veteran player, right? Because you got so much youth on your defense. Hopefully the DC that you bring in is good at developing young talent. Al Golden would be pretty good at that, right? And as right on cue, Darren says we need Al Golden. But and you're going to be drafting guys on defense as well, but you have to bring in some veterans that are going to be able to go out there and start for you defensively as well. That was kind of the idea with Geno Stone, and that was kind of a whiff, right? So, we'll talk about potential cut candidates here in a moment. Geno Stone's going to be at the top of that list. But I need to see a veteran come in there that has experience in the league, that's a well-trusted guy that can kind of take the younger guys under his wing, make sure they're making the right decisions, things of that nature. And if there's a veteran pass rusher or lockdown corner, sign me up as far as a acquisition goes for Cincinnati. But they're not going to trade their first-round pick. That's just not something they're going to do. Sage, Ohio is here, hanging out. Hung out with a lot of our watch parties as well. Says Houday from Columbus. I appreciate that. Brock says, how many games did Zach lose for us this year? I don't know. 1 maybe? 1 or 2? 1 or 2? I mean, you're talking about the Baltimore game right there, but, I mean, you weren't stopping anybody at the end of that game. And he had to stick to his guns and continue to be aggressive. I didn't think anything there was a problem. Yeah, it was unfortunate it didn't go your way, especially a game that had so much significance there, and you really needed it in the season. You played well enough to win. Both times you played Baltimore, but I think that's how he had to coach the game. Hopefully next year he doesn't have to coach the game that way because the defense can be a little bit more competent if he is able to get this defensive coordinator hire right. All you guys picking on Zach Taylor, you might need to be picking on him for picking the wrong defensive coordinator. I'll get on Zach Taylor for that. If we start next season, right, and the defense looks like they did this year, then I'm going to be all over Zach Taylor for making the wrong hire, to be honest with you, because I believe this is the biggest decision of his head coaching career, and he can't afford to mess this one up. And then, of course, I think the offensive line would really be second behind that as well. Let me know who you want for the Bengals' next DC. Get them in the comments section. As we get set up here for our final segment here of our live show here this afternoon. Appreciate you guys. Got about 100 of you in here. And we've got the 50-50 like ratio. We got 62 likes. How about that? Appreciate it. Keep the comments coming. Let me know who you guys want as the Bengals' next defensive coordinator as we get set up for our final segment here on Bengals Breakdown. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be cooking up an offseason plan for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2025. And by the way, we're going to be being realistic in the process as well. Not going to see any crazy stuff. I think this is all stuff Cincinnati is capable of doing and stuff that, in my opinion, they need to do if they want to get to where they want to get to and really be a threat in the NFL, which they should be when they have guys like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on their football teams. That is coming up on today's show. But before we get into that, make sure you hit that thumbs up icon for us if you have not done so already. Switching it up here in 2025, the month of January. Obviously, we've done a lot of like battles with Joey Peterson and our Ravens channel here at Chat Sports. Switching it up with Chris Daughtry, the host of our Alabama Football Report. You might be thinking, why the heck you doing Alabama? Well, we run the Alabama Football Report out of our Cincinnati office as well. Chris Daughtry, who's producing for me right now, is the host of the Alabama Football Report. We have a bit of a lead on him right now, but no reason to get cocky. The reason we have this lead is because we have had some watch parties this month that Chris has not had. So that's kind of why we have an advantage right now, but we got to keep hitting that thumbs up icon because Chris and the Alabama Football Report are going to be coming for us. Help me out. Hit that thumbs up icon if you have not done so already. Step one, got to nail the defensive coordinator hire. Have to. Talked about it on our last cut earlier. Absolutely have to find a way to knock this out of the park if you are Zach Taylor. And this 100% is his decision. There is really no doubt about that whatsoever. Here's who we've talked about here on Bengals Breakdown as far as defensive coordinator candidates go. These are all the names that we have mentioned. Dennis Allen. He was the guy that Zach Taylor really tried to bring in when he first got the job, right? And Dennis Allen was the defensive coordinator with the Saints at the time, so it didn't really make any sense to make a lateral move for Dennis Allen. I think the talks have kind of cooled down there, but I think Allen definitely is a formidable guy that could potentially take over for Cincinnati. We talked about Robert Saleh a lot as well. He's going to be a highly sought-after guy. Obviously, the connections with Mike Zimmer previously being here. I think the best defenses in franchise history were coached by Mike Zimmer. Eberflus for the Chicago Bears, of course. His head coaching tenure was a disaster, but he did some great things as the DC for Indianapolis. Christian Parker, an up-and-coming kind of guy. Aubrey Pleasant, I'm a big fan of him, works for Sean McVay. I would love to see him get an interview. Steve Klinkscale has some Ohio connections, as does Ryan Downward. And, of course, the two guys that Cincinnati has interviewed, Patrick Graham and DeMarcus Covington, and James Rapine shouting out Tosh Lupoy. These are all the guys that we've talked about here on Bengals Breakdown, but there is going to be plenty of other guys as well in the coming days, and we will update that list. But those are kind of the guys that we have discussed. Got to nail it. No other way around it. Have to be better on that side of the ball, and it all starts with that defensive coordinator hire. Number two, my opinion, really the number one thing that needs to happen. Chronologically, the defensive coordinator hire comes first, but this is the most important thing that needs to happen in the offseason for Cincinnati. Got to pay Ja'Marr Chase. You didn't do it last season, which didn't make a ton of sense, but at the same time, I was like, whatever. Like, he's got to play another year before he technically deserves it, what have you. Well, he went out there and won the Triple Crown, and he's ready to break the bank. 120 receptions, over 1,700 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns. Unbelievable. One of the best seasons you've ever seen from any receiver in the National Football League. Got to figure out how to pay this guy his money so he shows up on time for training camp. No reason to extend this longer than it needs to. Priority number one, get that man his money when it comes to Ja'Marr Chase at that wide receiver spot. Speaking of priority number one, what do you guys think priority number one should be for the Bengals this offseason? Let me know in the comment section. I personally think it is pay Ja'Marr Chase, but I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down there and sound off for us. Number 3, pay T. Higgins at that wide receiver position. Again, coming into the season, I was expecting this to be T. Higgins last year with the Cincinnati Bengals. Then the season plays out, and my mind has changed in regards to T. Higgins at that wide receiver position. I think you need him. Your offense is too potent, too nasty when he is out there on the football field, and he complements Ja'Marr Chase so well. Chase is obviously the one, right? But T. Higgins would be a one in so many other places around the league. Joe Burrow clearly wants him to stay in Cincinnati multiple times in press conferences throughout this year. He has brought that up, and it's up to the organization to make this happen. Taking a look at those numbers there, unbelievable stuff. Wasn't able to eclipse 1,000 yards. I think the injuries are definitely a concern, but really, people love talking about T. Higgins and his injuries. Well, let's talk about the injuries he played through this year, right? Against Pittsburgh and against Denver when he absolutely went off. He was so banged up in that game and went nuts. And early in his career, he really didn't get that banged up at all. But it's just the past couple of seasons. Injuries somewhat of a concern for me, but I definitely think he is a guy that needs to come back for the Cincinnati Bengals. Got to make that happen. Next up, talked about nailing the defensive coordinator hire. You also got to nail the offensive line coach hire. No doubt about that as well. Frank Pollock, I think, deserves a ton of criticism for the way the offensive line has played in recent years, to be quite honest with you. The organization put a lot of resources towards that group, free agency and draft picks. Can't blame the front office for the offensive line. Frank Pollock had everything he needed right there in front of him, and he absolutely could not get it done. This next guy better come in ready to go because you got Joe Burrow back there. It's your franchise. And got to find a better way to protect him. He went off this year, as a lot of us expected him to do, but he cannot be continuing to take that kind of punishment year in and year out. I understand a lot of it has to do with the style in which he plays. He holds on the ball, he extends plays, but can't take that much punishment in 2025 because if number 9 is not upright, you're toast. Next up, cut some of your veterans. There are several veteran players on the Cincinnati Bengals that you just got to make the decision. Zach Taylor made the tough call to get rid of Lou Anarumo. There's going to be some tough decisions here, but decisions that you need to make because the production from some of these guys just wasn't what it needed to be. Sheldon Rankins, you would save $10.5 million in cap space if you were to cut him. No-brainer, right? You essentially made the move last offseason to go with him over DJ Reader because DJ Reader's not making a ton of money. In fact, I think you're paying Sheldon Rankins more than what the Lions are paying Reader. Massive mistake by Cincinnati. Rankins had the illness that basically sidelined him for the majority of the year, and he had the hamstring before that. So he didn't really play much for you, but when he was out there, it was clear that he was not really a great piece for you. No-brainer to me, cut him. Geno Stone, another guy. He threw a contract at in the offseason. I expected him to come in and kind of pick up where he left off in Baltimore. That was not the case. He had a really bad season at that safety spot for Cincinnati. Was a liability back there. I'm ready to cut him, move on. I don't think there's really any reason to, try to run it back with Geno Stone. He was out there for every single game. You know what he did. Why try to bring him back? Maybe the DC can, develop him a little bit better. He's still a younger kind of guy. But his year one, as far as I go, was a disaster. And then Sam Hubbard. This one's tough. Would save $6 million against the cap if you were to cut him. Clearly not the player he once was. Doesn't really offer you anything from a pass rush perspective, which is unfortunate. Look, cut him. Maybe try to find a way to get him back on the team. Cincinnati legend. Everybody loves Sam Hubbard, but $6 million against the cap. You certainly could use it. He is not worth that at this point in his career. We'll continue with our show here in a moment, but first, want to give a shout out to our friends over at Game Time, because today's show is presented by Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks is the easiest way to find and buy tickets to live events, really focused on the postseason this time of year. Now, our Cincinnati Bengals, of course, aren't playing, but that doesn't mean you can't get tickets on Game Time to see another NFL postseason game. Would really encourage you guys do that. Game Time makes it so easy for you to get your tickets, show up to the game, and get into the venue and have an absolute blast. You can always count on Game Time. Also, Red Spring Training will be here before we know it. Highly recommend you get out to Goodyear, Arizona, and check out some Reds Spring Training games, courtesy of our friends over at Game Time when you use their ticketing app. My two favorite features on Game Time: the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy with Game Time. Secondly, the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature up front allows you to see your total up front, so you don't get hit with any of those surprise fees at checkout like some of those other ticketing companies can get you with. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets at the lowest prices, guaranteed. Next up here, got to retool the interior offensive line. Really pleased with what you got at the tackle spots. Obviously, you hope for more health with Orlando Brown Jr. and Amarius Mims. Love what you got in your center, Ted Karras, but your guard play got to be better. In fact, I just need to see new bodies in there. Alex Kappa, a lot of people fell in love with him. Kind of, as far as the Hard Knocks goes, he had some good moments on there, but look, the play just has not been up to the standard of a National Football, level starting guard in Alex Kappa, and you have to move off him when things like that are happening. Also, the guard spot, opposite of him, whether it be Cordell Volson or Cody Ford, neither one of those guys are offering enough for you at those spots. Need to see new bodies in. I'm fine if Volson's going to be a backup. In his case, I believe he's going into the final year of his rookie contract, if I am not mistaken, as far as Volson goes. But Kappa is a guy that you probably need to move off of. Tough decisions you need to make, and he really was one of the worst guards in the National Football League. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Name a player the Bengals should cut. So one of the guys I had just mentioned, or you got another guy in mind? Let me know in the comments of today's show. Next up here, as far as the offseason plan goes, add a pass rusher in free agency. Several guys that you can look at adding at that pass rush spot. Thought Joseph Osai kind of came on for you late in the season, but who knows if he will be back with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Trey Hendrickson obviously is a great player, but he needs some help. Here's some potential guys that could be on that list. Matthew Judon is a guy that I like a lot. Veteran player that was really great in New England, since has been with Atlanta. Matthew Judon in Cincinnati would be really exciting. Chase Young, obviously there's some Ohio ties there. His NFL career hasn't exactly panned out the way I'm sure he had hoped, but I definitely think he would provide an upgrade for you at that pass rush spot. Also, Azeez Ojulari, a guy that we talked a lot about trading for at the trade deadline. Cincinnati, of course, did not do that as he stayed with the New York Giants, but he's a guy that you could potentially go after in free agency this season out of Georgia. He really finished the year strong and had a really good game when you played New York on Sunday Night Football there at the earlier stages of the season. Next up, try to bring back Mike Gesicki. It should be at least something you're trying to accomplish. You might not be able to make it happen because why? Well, if you take a look at my list right there, if you're paying T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, there's not a ton of other resources to go around, especially you're paying Joe Burrow and all the holes that you got on defense. So paying a tight end doesn't seem like something you could really afford to do, but Mike Gesicki might be looking to take less so he can stay with a guy like Joe Burrow. Burrow loves him, right? No reason not to. Gesicki had an outstanding season. He's a great leader. He's a great locker room guy. He's great in the community as well. Really stand-up guy. And I think the Bengals should try to bring him back because they've never really had consistency at that tight end spot here in the Joe Burrow era. It's just kind of been new guys filtering in and out. I think Gesicki could be a guy for you for the next 2 or 3 years. But again, he played really well this year. He's looking to get paid, and it just might not be feasible that happens here in Cincinnati. We will be covering free agency, of course, here at Bengals Breakdown. If you enjoy free agency videos, found the right spot. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/BengalsTV for all your Cincinnati Bengals free agency needs. Number 9 here, 2 more. Look, nobody on defense is safe besides 91. 91, of course, is Trey Hendrickson. Look, you were awful on that side of the ball this season. Let's not get affected by what happened the last 5 weeks of the season to really get off which really took place on that side of the football. Cam Taylor-Britt at that cornerback spot. You expected him to come in and be a lockdown cornerback one for you in this league. It was good, pretty good a couple of years ago, but got benched twice here in 2024. And if the Bengals were to move off him, I would be completely fine. There's stories about him, not always being locked in, having a little bit too much fun off the field. Don't have time for that, especially when you're going out there on Sunday and not playing very well. Came on strong at the end of the year. Got to give credit to him. He fought the adversity. He handled it correctly, and he came back the right way. But if the Bengals feel like they can get a better guy at that cornerback spot, might have to move off CTB. Jermaine Pratt, I like Jermaine Pratt a lot. He gets a lot of flack, but he's regressed the past couple of years. It just is what it is. Got to give him a lot of credit. Man, look at all those tackles. So it wasn't like he wasn't tackling people. Tackle numbers still very, very good for Jermaine Pratt, but the play at the linebacker spot has not been good over the past couple of seasons. It's kind of the way it is. Now, hopefully the DC that comes in can help develop Pratt a little bit more, and maybe he can get back to kind of his old ways there at that linebacker spot. But Jermaine Pratt is a guy that you might have to look at moving off of as well, despite the fact you gave him a contract. Joseph Osai, he will be a free agent, just wrapped up the final season of his rookie campaign. Came on for you strong at the end of the year, but I just don't think he's a guy that you bring back if you're Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin, in this Bengals organization. I think you got to look at other places when it comes to that defensive end position. Jordan Battle, he had an opportunity. They gave the job back to him after Von Bell kind of took it from him at the beginning of the season. He was good in spots as far as Battle went, but just so much inconsistency at that safety spot with him and Geno Stone. Obviously still a young player. That was only year 2 for Battle, so they're probably not going to move off him. But he can't be a guy that you roll out there for every snap if he's not playing up to standard. He got beat over the top way too often here in 2024. Can't be the case again in 2025. Need to see a lot of development from Battle from year 2 to year 3. Last one here. Got to adjust the training camp and the preseason schedule. Look, what you're doing ain't working, right? So got to completely do something different when it comes to how you're handling training camp and the preseason. This is what Cincinnati has done in September under Zach Taylor. That is absolutely disgusting when you take a look at that, especially in 23 and 24 when you've had Joe Burrow. All right, 24 you had a healthy Joe Burrow and you didn't win a football game. Right? I mean, are you kidding? That's just absolutely unacceptable that would happen for the Cincinnati Bengals football team. And that's got to get cleaned up. And I think that starts with how you handle the offseason, how you handle training camp, and how you handle the preseason. Zach Taylor's been very much a player's coach. He's kind of taking things easy on some guys. Might have to switch that up and really get them to lock in September, because you absolutely cannot start out as slow as you did all of these seasons in September in 2025. Can't happen. One last one here. We went through our 10, but a bonus requirement. If Cincinnati is going to get to where they want to get to, and get to where they should get to based on the talent that they have on their football team, their front office must modernize their approach to handling and restructuring contracts. They have a very archaic way of operating, and that's kind of why they are where they're at. They go out and they spend a little bit of money, but they don't restructure the contracts in the right ways like a lot of these other teams do. Philadelphia, of course, comes to mind. Miami, you're sitting there like, oh, they're paying them, and them. How are they doing that? Why can't we do that? No, you can, and you need to do it if you're going to be able to keep T. Higgins, by the way, around as a Cincinnati Bengal. You got to allocate that money later. You got to push that money down the line, something they hate doing, but you have to modernize your approach if you want to build a formidable roster around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and company. Last opportunity to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. What is your confidence level in the Bengals front office this offseason? I completely understand if you are not confident based on what they have done in previous years, but let me know. Scale it for us 1 to 10 in the comments section. Who do you want as the next Bengals defensive coordinator? Let's get a couple of names in here before we get out of here on today's show. Let's get some more good names in here. I had about 100 people riding with us throughout our live show today, so I really appreciate you guys for that. Mike says -1. Yeah, hard not to say that, to be completely honest with you. Big offseason for the Bengals front office. They got to show that they have pivoted a little bit as far as their approach goes, and they have not been able to do that here to this point. Hopefully that can get cleaned up going forward, and we're gonna be along for the ride. We're gonna be here this whole time with you guys, watching it all play out, and really no reason to be confident, right? Considering what they've done in previous years. At minimum, obviously, you have to get Jamar Chase done. I don't think they would mess that up. But at minimum, that has to get done, and then from there, I would like to lock up T, and then from there, really, if you do both of those things, anything beyond that's a bonus, which is kind of scary considering what you have on the defensive side of the ball. But we'll see. I've officially switched. I would like T. Higgins to be back in 2025, but I also understand that's going to create some problems for you defensively when it comes to spending money. And we'll see if Duke Tobin and the Bengals front office is able to jump through those hoops and make that happen. Let me know who you got as the Bengals next DC. Let me know in the comments of today's show. Before we get out of here, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, youtube.com/BengalsTV. That concludes our very first live show here at Bengals Breakdown, not on a game day. Hopefully this is something we can do a lot going forward, whether it be a weekly or bi-weekly basis. I know I certainly enjoyed it. Had about 100 people in here hanging out the whole time. Hopefully we can just continue to build on that as the offseason progresses. In order for us to do that, we need to get those subscribers up, and we need to close in on 16,000 subscribers as soon as possible. If you enjoyed what we did here today, I appreciate it. Show your appreciation and hit that sub button, youtube.com/BengalsTV.